It's time to make sports talk great again with Curt Schilling and Steve Deace.
Greetings. Welcome to The Blaze. I am Steve Deace. He is Curt Schilling. Each and every weekday, we do our best to simply talk sports. Some days the outside world gets in. We do our best, though, to put a moat around it as best as we possibly can. We put 25 minutes on the clock, get to as many of the day's sports topics as we possibly can. If you are watching us today on YouTube or listening via podcast, if you can give us a like, subscribe, 5-star review as your platform of choice permits, we would greatly appreciate that. Thank you to all of you who have already done so. Curt Schilling, are you ready to go, brother?
I am ready to go.
Then we begin now. The feds in your backyard, hard at work yesterday. This looked like a scene out of The Dark Knight with 50 indictments all at one time. So there's a lot more to this story. It's called Operation Varsity Blues, is what the feds called this investigation into a scam in order for really rich people, rich, powerful, famous people whose children are, essentially spoiled and not putting in the work to get themselves admitted into elite universities, that they would essentially work through this fixer who, I should note, as the Wall Street Journal pointed out yesterday, he has admitted to all of this. So there's nothing alleged going on here. I mean, we have the wiretaps, we have the emails, and he has said, I am the guy that coordinated all of this. And he even told the judge, I knew it was illegal at the time. Okay.
He was going to be thrown under a jail and decided he wasn't going alone.
Right. Right. And so what we're about to say, none of this is debatable. This is all fact. All right. And so these are rich, famous people, powerful people. Their kids largely spoiled, didn't want to put in the work. So they concocted schemes to bribe college coaches and administrators into allowing their kids to get admitted to universities that they academically weren't qualified for. Now, there are... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we're talking huge money.
Yes, yes. In the case of Lori Loughlin of Full House fame, her and her husband paid $500,000 to get their two daughters into USC. Now, there were multiple methods they did this, where, they would claim a disability when they didn't have one, so they could have multiple days to take the ACT test to essentially keep getting studied up. All right. But one of the most common ways that ties into our program is these famous, they're children of famous people. They were claiming that they were recruited players in sports where who gets recruited isn't covered. Like, we couldn't do this in football and basketball. You and I talked about the fact, Rivals.com got catfished about a month ago by a fake player. Yeah. You can't do that with all the coverage of the recruiting of those major revenue sports. But women's sports, particularly if they're not basketball, and all these non-revenue sports, lacrosse, tennis, they were claiming they were recruited athletes. Why? Because most of these schools, even Ivy League schools, may have a slightly to more lenient admission standard if you are an athlete or a recruited athlete compared to if you are just generally applying for admission.
In this case, no standard.
Or no standards whatsoever. Right. And so these coaches of these non-revenue sports, these administrators, they were taking bribes from this individual funneled to them by these famous people. It amounted to $25 million the feds can account for of bribes to these schools. You see USC up there on the screen. Some of you may be like, I thought USC was a football factory. See, what a lot of people don't know about USC, and a school like Notre Dame would be in the same boat in a way, even though Notre Dame's a religious school and USC is not. But these are actually both private schools that academically are elite of the elite. Like a notch right below a Stanford. All right. So you don't just get into this school with a 2.8 and a high school diploma and a 24 ACT. You're not they're going to laugh at you if you send that in your form at USC.
These schools are for the kids who are the 4.0s and above.
Miami is another elite academic school. It's just because they were the U for football, where they had a totally different admission standards for the guys that the Two Live crew wanted on the team. The rest of the other 6,500 kids that got into Miami were all elite academic people.
They worked their asses off.
Yes, and so these guys and gals, the progeny many of these famous people didn't have the grades to get in. And so these college coaches and administrators took bribes in order to falsify that these were recruited athletes in order to gain them favorable admission over the general population. The latest major scandal to hit college sports, Curt.
They took the place of kids who actually did the work. They took, and listen, I'm not going to act like there was a Mensa member lost a spot in these schools for every one of these 47 that we know about right now. But the fact of the matter is there are 47 kids. If 47 is the number right now, 47 people, if it's 25 or 35 or 40, there are 40 some kids who did everything that they were asked of and more in high school to get into one of these schools who lost the spot because they're, as well as I do, they hand out so many spots and they, they keep, and I'm blown away by a couple things. First of all, I know we don't like to get political, but my God, is this not, and I'm very, very comfortable saying that, is this not liberals enacting white privilege that they scream about every single day, hating?
I don't know what Lori Loughlin's politics are.
And I'm going to say,
I've seen her, like, people have sent me clips of her on like CBN with Pat Robertson. I'd have no idea. But if you're looking for an example of white privilege,
right,
this would actually, the fact there's not enough black coaches in the NFL, whatever, and we don't have what's the number, by the way? It should be 9, 10, 14, 4. We don't know what the number, which white coaches should be fired. Like, they never tell us that, okay? But if you're looking for what would real white privilege look like? It would look exactly like this.
And you won't do it. And I know you won't because you're much more cautious. Now, I'll say it. There's no doubt in my mind. Well, as soon as you say Hollywood, what do you think of?
Sure, there's a stereotype there. Right. Sure,
and the stereotype for I stop using stereotype when it starts to become the common sense thing. That if you're a conservative in Hollywood, you're one in a million in many cases. But the fact of the matter is, we're going to find out these people are all going to be. I guarantee you, there will be more Hollywood people. There will be huge political donors. As well.
You're seeing that. In fact, if you look at, I think I sent you this tweet. If you look at the political donations of who's involved in bribing these college coaches and administrators, I think there's 6 of them that were Mitt Romney donors, 6 of them that were Hillary Clinton donors, 5 of them that I think were Barack Obama donors. So I mean, this was obviously something well known. This is a little bit like Jeffrey Epstein's rape island. This is something that was largely well known and well coordinated amongst the elite set, regardless of politics, really. And if you're at a different, tax bracket than everybody else, you were aware of that you could get by doing this.
It's pay to play.
No doubt. Here's the thing that bothers me about this, though. The NCAA is already sending signals here that it really doesn't think it has jurisdiction. Hell, this goes to what I've talked about before. Tell me, I am a Michigan fan. Let me admit all my biases. I hate Ohio State, okay?
Right.
I hate Ohio State.
It's palpable.
Tell me why I give a rip that Terrell Pryor got tattoos and Maurice Claret got a car. Why do I care? So you're right, because Ohio State was like never any good in football before they gave free tattoos to Terrell Pryor.
Well,
this is ridiculous. So you're telling me we're gonna give Jim Tressel, and hey, he lied to the NCAA, so he made his bet. He shouldn't have lied to him. Okay, that's really what he did wrong, was he lied. Right. But tell me why we're gonna say Jim Tressel is persona non grata in college sports because guys got a car and a tattoo, but the NCAA has nothing to say about North Carolina compromising its academic integrity, USC and Texas and all the Ivy League schools involved in this. To me, this is straining a gnat, to use a biblical analogy here, to swallow a camel. Why do I care what third-party person paid a player as an adult for their likeness or services? Why wouldn't I care more about actual university employees using their standing to tarnish and diminish the academic integrity of the institution? Shouldn't that be number 1 on the list?
This is so far beyond the things that you and I talk about. From an alumni paying someone to mow their yard $1,500 a week.
Right? Why do I care about that?
You don't.
Why do I care? A poor black kid got $1,500 to mow a booster's yard. Why do I care?
Right. You've been made to care about that, right? Because the people are telling us how evil that is. This is evil personified right here. In all of the instances you and I talk about, another student isn't hurt. There is no detriment to any. Yes, they're breaking the rules. They should get fined. They should get kicked out. They should get suspended. All things that go with that. None of that. Absolutely none of it affects the day-to-day life of any other human being. None of it. Zero.
This does. These are spots that went to people who didn't earn them that would have gone to people who did. This is clearly not a victimless crime.
I can see a class action suit here at some point coming up. And remember this, okay? This is exactly why I have a saying that I'll give you in a second. This was in my backyard, right? This was done in Boston. This is out of the Boston Bureau of the FBI. It's a federal crime because it's mail fraud and all these other things that went on and happened. But Harvard and MIT are in this. And this is why I've been able to say, and now I can comfortably say, some of the stupidest people I know, and I'm being 100% sincere, are Harvard graduates. And now listen, this damages, this is the fake hate crime, right? This damages every single student who spent 15 hours a day in the library at Harvard to get that degree. This damages everyone at every one of those institutions because now, even though it's not the majority, somebody can say, well, you went to Harvard, so I could buy my way. You can buy your way into Harvard.
Howard Feynman at MSNBC reported he has been a political reporter and a news reporter all my life. I mean, he's been a fixture on television. He tweeted out yesterday, his sources are telling him what we got yesterday was the tip of the iceberg. Right. And this is going to go even further and deeper into the Ivy League than we've already seen. And
my biggest problem with that is that's exactly what we heard around the Kraft incident, right? But this is liberals eating their own, and I got to believe that there's going to be very little appetite to blow this story up the more it comes out because the names are not going to be names people are going to want on the left's going to want.
We'll see, and that line of topic is for another program. Okay, right. I will leave it at. I'll say this and then we'll move on to another sports topic. We thought, what you're seeing on the American left is there's a generational divide there. Yeah. And a few years ago, like a Harvey Weinstein story would have been covered up for all the political reasons that you just talked about.
It was covered up.
But there's a new left emerging that's like, we don't want to cover those things up anymore. Right. And they're the ones that blew that story open. Yeah. All right. And we are still seeing people go down because of this. So, we'll see. The old arrangements aren't necessarily generationally as true as they used to be.
I feel sad. I do honestly feel sympathy for those kids who missed because you know what they say, you never get that time back.
Right.
And I also want kids to know, especially in sports, which is very much saying you don't have to go to college to be an incredibly successful person and support a family and be comfortable your entire life. You absolutely do not have to go to college.
No, I mean, this is just rich people that just wanted their kids to have a certificate so they felt good amongst their peers.
Their kids didn't want to do the work or weren't smart enough.
Right. So let's get to the debate over fan behavior. And I'm interested in this for you as a former player and, was involved with some fan bases that are known for letting you have it, whether you were, with the Red Sox if you struggled or when you went to the Bronx and heard from the Bronx Zoo. There's a reason why we call it the Bronx cheer, all right, in sports. Okay, so you have some exposure to this. So Russell Westbrook apparently got into it, the Oklahoma City star, got into it with a Utah Jazz fan and his girlfriend, leading to Westbrook being fined about $25,000. The fan has been banned by the Utah Jazz. There's claims of racial tensions between NBA players and the predominantly white fans of Utah. Let's take a look at this video.
After the game, Westbrook defended his remarks, claiming the fan yelled a racially insensitive comment.
How it started was a young man and his wife in the stands told me to get down on my knees like he used to. And for me, that's just completely disrespectful to me. I think it's racial. I think it's just inappropriate in the sense of there's no protection for the players. There's got to be something done. There's got to be some consequences for those type of people that come to the game just to say and do whatever they want to say. And I don't think it's fair to the players, not just to me, but
So this was blown up. Kirk Herbstreit from College Game Day, his entire Twitter feed yesterday was debating other fans and other sports media personalities like Jason Whitlock about what is heckling, what are fans allowed to do, what's out of bounds, what's tawdry, etc. Now, just to show, the Proverbs says one man's side of the story seems true until you hear the other side. For what it's worth, the fan is claiming that he never said get down on your knees, but why don't you ice your knees like you typically do? I don't have a clue what that's a reference to, but I wanted to state the fan who wasn't included in that clip has a side version of events. But what is out of bounds and what is not? What's the worst you heard? Was there ever a time that you thought, hey, you know what, man, even the mob doesn't let you go after the wives and children. This is uncalled for. You were leaving the scene right as the social media era was dawning. Okay, so that amplifies all of this times a million, right? But what's your take on this?
I have a couple takes. First off, I don't know. Well, I guess you remember Adam Jones here in Boston, who claimed that someone in center field in a stadium of 40,000 people shouted the N-word at him, and no one else heard it. No one identified with it. No one claimed it. While the next night it happened at a game, somebody said something and the guy was thrown out. This turned left, hard left on me as I was reading. I wasn't sure what we were getting. I thought we were getting with player-fan interaction. I didn't know the race component, and I also, didn't
just assume everything has a race component nowadays, and we'll just it's baked in. Assumed, asked and answered, Your Honor.
My first thought was, okay, so you're telling me this guy, because anytime somebody says racist, I immediately think somebody says the N-word, and which, I can't even comment on that word. But
can I ask you a point blank question? Do you mind? How often did you hear that?
Never.
In the 2 decades you played in the major leagues?
Not once.
You never heard it from a fan one time? Once?
Nope, not one time except in the clubhouse.
I mean, but with a connotation, an urban connotation, black players talking to black players, basically. Yeah.
It was a fight word, and it was a joke word.
Okay.
All right. In the minor leagues, you heard it more in the minor leagues, in the locker rooms, because it was so different. But here's the thing. I don't know. The stadium has, on the back of the stadium ticket is the code of conduct policy, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to act within certain parameters, blah, blah, blah. This guy apparently is suspended for life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not questioning whether Russell heard what he heard. I'm questioning whether the kid said what he said. Now, if he did, somebody else is coming forward, right? He wasn't sitting behind the basket all by himself.
Mm-hmm.
He was sitting around people, and you'll hear somebody else say, God, yes, I heard him say it. You can mishear things, but here's the thing. There were times when I got people kicked out of the stadium because they would say things that weren't fit for sailors, or in a bar at night, and there were kids around, or there were women around, and it was just they were embarrassing. They would say things to the point where people around them would be like, oh. And they wouldn't want to even get involved. Those are the people I never ever heard. And not because I'm white, but I was around black players, Latino players of all races and religions. I never, ever heard it.
You did play at the sort of the dawn of the Latin invasion of baseball. We had Roberto Clemente and other great, but really a lot of the white kids that used to play sandlots were replaced by players from Latin America in your era, right? Did you hear xenophobic or ethnicity comments and like that from fans ever?
No, players, yes,
because
you're talking about bringing together immense numbers of people from incredibly different cultures and backgrounds. And I got to tell you, in the minor leagues, when I was younger, when I first got in the big leagues, there were guys, I didn't know that they were real, but there were kids from the South who were born and raised, and they acted almost like plantation owners. It was so awkward, and they weeded themselves out very quickly, because they couldn't function in the sport, obviously. But never, No, and it's
that's an interesting point that I think I've never heard uttered before, which is you're going to have a hard time in a meritocracy that just looks at people and says, I don't care who you went to bed with last night, and I don't care what color your underoos are. Can you hit 300? Okay.
I played with gay ball players, Steve.
And that's fascinating to me because if you, what you're essentially saying to our audience is, it's not that people didn't bring these prejudices with them. Yeah. It's just that in the environment necessary to be successful, this could not, this petri dish wouldn't tolerate it, is what you're saying.
And I always said, listen, I played with less than 20, but more than 5 gay players that I knew were gay. Mm-hmm. If they could hit with runners in scoring position or get a left-hander out late in the game, I didn't care about the other stuff. Mm-hmm. Nobody did. Nobody cared about that stuff. Nobody cared about, I don't know how many minority teammates had. I never ever looked at a teammate and said, well, he's black. I just never did. It was about winning. And that's why when I hear athletes claim racism in sports, for the most part, is roster, I laugh because it's a multi-billion-billion-dollar industry that wants money. The owners above all else want money. And they get money by getting wins, by being, all the things that go with that. So, you can hear players say, oh, they run this like a slave plantation. Well, you know what? I don't remember slaves getting 7-year deals and
lots of plantations. I mean, isn't that what LeBron James called the NFL?
Right.
That the owners have a plantation mentality. Lots of plantations had $188 million salary caps for 53 guys. Lots of them did.
You know what that does? That offends me, and that's embarrassing because it belittles.
It's the mindset that leads to the sort of elitism we talked about in the opening segment.
It belittles Frank Robinson.
Yep.
And Curt Flood and Jackie Robinson and all the guys who played. I remember hearing Barry Bonds
belittles the Satchel Pages and the Josh Gibsons who were denied their greatness because of real racism. Why you get called a racist and you won't even count any stats pre-desegregation. So I mean,
that was real white privilege. Right? I mean, that was the ultimate in white privilege. And so when I hear a modern day, I'm not, and by the way, Steve, you and I are never claiming that racism doesn't exist because people will always be racist. You can't legislate morals. You can't put law in effect unless you control your population. And that's not what I would argue. Athletes have more freedom now than they've ever had.
So Philadelphia, where they booed Santa Claus, you played there 25 years ago.
Yep.
You never heard any racial bombs at all.
Never. None.
So you mean to tell me we're more racist now than we were 25 years ago?
No,
that's not how progressivism is supposed to work. We're supposed to be advancing and getting better, I thought.
And you know what? I've never seen a water fountain that was ruled whites only, or a bathroom or a restaurant. And again, the hard part is you have to keep caveating this, especially in sports, because I would argue that the Adam Joneses of the world, who I don't believe the event happened, do more damage to athletes than they do help. The fake hate crime continues that oh my God, racism is everywhere. Well, no, it's not. We've marginalized these scumbags and they're gone. Mm-hmm. They have no well, except now with what's going on in Congress. But the fact of the matter is nobody matters on that side of the ledger anymore unless the media makes them matter, which is what the liberal media does.
Let's skip the bubble watch because we're going to talk a lot about the NCAA tournament and Selection Sunday on Friday's show. Let's go to College Game Day. Fox Sports announced it will debut a new college football pregame show this fall, largely built around Urban Meyer, the former Ohio State coach. It's also going to include USC Heisman winners Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart. You'll recall Reggie Bush is the only player ever to give back his Heisman trophy because he was technically ineligible for violating NCAA rules for improper benefits while he was winning the Heisman at USC. Brady Quinn at Notre Dame, who wasn't much of an NFL quarterback, but has really, I think, established himself as a really high-quality football analyst, both for college and the pros. This will be the team that Fox is going to go after College Game Day with. And I'm going to tell you this, I think College Game Day is the best pregame show ever created. And the great irony is and this is when you can tell people, how do you know people don't know something or don't want to know? Like the management, and a lot of that's been purged from ESPN that tried to turn it into the social justice network the last few years. You knew that they knew that what they were doing was wrong, because they never, one of the biggest cash cows at this network, one of its most popular venture or profitable ventures is College Game Day. And here you go to all these liberal college campuses, all right? And I've watched like every episode of College Game Day in the last 25 years. They never politicize the show. They put like a moat around it. It's all about Americana, the great stories, the sports, etc. And I think that's one of the secret sauces of its success. But what do you think of this lineup of Fox going after College Game Day? I think it has any chance at all? Because I don't think that it does.
It absolutely has a chance.
You do. I don't think it does. But go ahead.
Well, here's why. Because football doesn't have a hard capped audience. I think we underestimate how many people are actually passionate about the game. I don't think it has a chance to take over by any stretch, because I agree, College Game Day, there's nothing like College Game Day. I would argue College Game Day was kind of like ESPN's Baseball Tonight before that got bought. But the fact of the matter is, I would defer to you only in the sense that you've seen these personalities more than I have. You understand them a little bit more. The interaction between them is going to be it's like the
it's
NFL
the chemistry factor. Yes.
Right. Bradshaw and Cower and those guys, how they do it, and Gruden, how Gruden used to do it. The chemistry of those guys is going to be what matters, not the personality. I
agree. And you're putting people that haven't really been together together.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that'll be fascinating to watch. All right, tomorrow we're going to do a deep dive on NFL free agency. And we're gonna go through where the teams are now compared to, as a power rating, where they ended the year based on their draft order, because that's the ultimate power rating, right? That's what you actually did for a season, okay?
And we'll get in depth with one of the biggest trades of the offseason.
Yeah, well, the trade factors, the trade market is the biggest trade market I can ever remember in the NFL. We've had like 3 Herschel, not in terms of hauls, but in terms of brand names.
Yes.
We've had like 2 Herschel Walker trades, and then the Le'Veon Bell deal. And I think Le'Veon Bell is getting unfairly criticized. And this is coming from the guy that's criticized him the entire time. We're going to talk about all of that tomorrow right here on The Blaze. Curt, we'll see you then.
Have a good one, bud.
Take care.